Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, all participants. Today we are having our beloved Professor Dr. Nagasamy sir with us to discuss the case of a young female coming for safe confinement, and she's requesting labor analgesia. And our Dr. Pavitra from Annamalai Medical College, Annamalai Medical College, and Dr. Rakesh Kumar from Northern Delhi Central Hospital, they are going to present the case. I wish you all a very useful and a very informative session today. And kindly mute all your mics when professor and the presenters are participating in the event. Thank you. Over to Dr. Nagasamy, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Dr. Pavitra, are you here there? Can you hear me?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can you just show your face once and then block your video?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Similarly, Dr. Rakesh Kumar also can switch on your video once and then block it if you are tense and nervous to present.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can I see your face? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. You are both of you are post diploma candidates or primary candidates?
Sir, I am primary candidate, sir.
You
I
are
am
primary.
post diploma candidate. Sir.
Post diploma candidates. Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank
So now the case scenario has already been given to you as a 24-year-old female, 38 weeks of pregnancy with coming for safe confinement, and she requests epidural analgesia. She requests labor analgesia rather. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, if a lady comes with that request, how will you proceed? She will not come directly to the anesthetist and ask for labor analgesia. So she has to first meet her obstetrician and make a request to the obstetrician saying that I want a painless labor, and the obstetrician will refer the patient to you. So is it 38 weeks safe enough to deliver the patient, or should you allow her to, what would you advise if the patient is referred to you by the obstetrician at 38 weeks of pregnancy saying that this lady is very, very keen on having a painless labor. So let us plan for painless labor and I am referring to you for assessment for planning our painless labor procedure. So if she comes to you with that request from obstetrician, what are the things you will look into? Normally, how many weeks it takes for the delivery to happen? What is the total duration of pregnancy?
42 weeks, sir.
42 weeks.
37 to 42 weeks, sir.
Okay, roughly say 40 weeks. Okay, now she is 38 weeks only. So what will you try to find out?
Sir, I have to.
Something else is coming in the way. Intravenous cannulation, something is coming. Viewing AB screen. Kamachi, some disturbance.
Yes, sir. Dr. Amita Balaji. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Okay, move it. Yes, sir.
Right. So,
Sir, the
suppose,
decision regarding the epidural anesthesia and painless delivery, it's basically has to be decided by the obstetrician and the patient themselves.
No. Please understand my question. Obstetrician has referred the patient to you saying that this 24-year-old lady, primigravida, she is keen on having a painless labor, but she is only 38 weeks of pregnancy. So what are the informations you want to gain from the patient before directly saying that you will plan for epidural anesthesia and all that? What are the other informations you want to know?
Sir, her height, weight, her history of any previous comorbidity or surgeries.
Very good. What about her pregnancy state? You don't want any history about her pregnancy state?
First trimester, second trimester history, sir.
Now she is in the last trimester. 38 weeks
Trimesters.
means she has come to the third trimester, isn't it?
I have to ask if she is under, she is experiencing regular contractions.
What are the names? What is the name for such regular contractions? And contractions occur where? What do you mean by regular contractions?
Regular and sustained contractions, these are called labor pains, sir.
Labor pain. So 38 weeks, he has been just referred. She has come to the OP with a request to the physician saying that I want a painless labor, and she has referred. She has not actually come in any labor pain or anything. If at all you ask for history of any pain occurring, what is the name for that pain? That is the question I am asking. And when will it start? And what is the difference between that pain and the true labor pain?
Braxton Hicks contraction, sir.
Very good. That is the name for, otherwise also known as, in colloquial terms or layman term, is it a true pain?
False labor pain, sir.
It is also called false labor pain. Okay, sometimes, when can it start, this Braxton Hicks pain or false labor pain? When can a pregnant woman start experiencing this? Only during the final trimester or earlier also?
Earlier also she can experience the pain
So after
contractions.
20th week of pregnancy, from that time onwards, anytime she can feel some sort of vague pain in the abdomen, which is called the Braxton Hicks or false pains. What is the characteristic of that pain? And how will you differentiate between that pain and the true labor pain?
Sir, the pain will be mild in frequency and it will be irregular.
Excellent, very good. Whereas true labor pain, what will be the characteristic?
Intense pain will be there. It will be regular in frequency.
Occurrence,
sir.
okay, and it will be progressive. Okay.
Progressive.
It will continue. It will not stop. Whereas the Braxton Hicks pain will occur now and then and will disappear on its own. Okay. So that is what you have to first ask, whether you are you experiencing any pain like a labor pain. If the woman says, no, I have vague pain like this, then you rule out active labor or a starting of an active labor now. Okay. So before, see, when she has come at 38 weeks without any features of active labor pain, what are all the other, you said comorbidities you want. What are the comorbidities associated with pregnancy you want to rule out or learn about?
So gestation hypertension.
Very good. Excellent. Then?
Gestation diabetes mellitus.
Excellent. Very good. Then?
And her USG findings of placental, either to rule out placenta previa and abruptio placentae, sir.
Okay. That is more of an obstetrician's domain, right? Then? Associated with gestational hypertension, do you want to rule out something else?
Yes, sir.
Mild preeclampsia. Okay. Patient may be having a mild preeclampsia. All that you must rule out. Okay. So all the associated comorbidities due to pregnancy should be ruled out in this patient. And then
associated heart disease also.
What any other things? Associated heart disease is excellent. Okay, very good, right? And what about any other? If this lady is very keen to have a painless labor, could it have been started only in the last trimester, or could something else could have been done in the earlier phases also? Are you able to understand my question? When, when a patient is very keen to have a painless labor, should it start only in the final trimester or at 38 weeks, or can something be done from the time of diagnosing pregnancy? Antenatal period itself, can you do something?
Yeah, sir. yoga and
Ah,
exercises.
Psychoprophylaxis can be done, sir.
non-pharmacological therapies. It is to be classified as non-pharmacological
Pharmacological
therapies.
therapy.
So what are the non-pharmacological therapies you know of, which can be started very well early in the pregnancy, in the antenatal period? One is, you said, psychotherapy. Is it called
Breathing,
psychotherapy or hypnotic therapy?
Yes.
It is
hypnosis.
called hypnosis or hypnotic
Hypnosis.
therapy. Okay. What is Lamey's method of pain relief?
Breathing exercises and conditioned
Yeah, it's a
reflexes.
conditioning. Basically.
Very good. Right. That can be done. Then
And Leboyer technique is there, sir. Dark room delivery can be
that
conducted.
is only for baby. Okay, not to
Okay.
stimulate the baby, and that also comes in the time of labor. But antenatally, you have to talk about hypnosis, psychotherapy, and then you can talk about the breathing exercise, Lamey's technique, and
Acupuncture.
periodical acupuncture, massaging. All these things can be done.
Tense also.
TENS
Sir,
also.
tense.
Now, very good. Now that you have
Aromatherapy also.
aromatherapy, but all that aromatherapy will be in the antenatal period, but
Birth in
TENS
hot
will
water.
occur only once you have the pain contraction starting on. Now that you have talked about TENS, what is the mechanism by which TENS helps in relieving the pain?
Sir, there is a local endorphin release.
Local endorphin release in TENS therapy? Pavitra, are you aware of that? What is gate control theory of pain? See, if you talk about TENS in the exam, you must be prepared to answer this particular point. TENS works by what is called gate control therapy of
Sir,
pain. What is
inhibiting the
inhibiting the-
afferent pathways present in dorsal horn, sir.
There is what it needs some more correct explanation. Afferent pathway, there are so many.
Electrical stimulation which inhibits the.
No. What do you understand by gate control theory of pain? That is the mechanism by which TENS works. And how do you explain the one of the short note questions in the theory paper also?
It closes the gates so that the signal is not transferred to the central nervous system. Actually.
Okay, which one closes the gate? Which fiber? See, if there is a theory question like this, if you just write it closes the gate, will the answer be correct and will you get marks for that? You have to draw up a diagram and then explain what are all the fibers involved and where exactly it is happening. And unless you write all that, you will not get marks for that answer, isn't it? If you just write it closes the gate, it is not as easy as closing your door or your room house gate, isn't it? So the fibers involved are A beta fibers and C fibers. A beta fibers. Normally, which are the fibers carrying the pain sensation and what type of pain sensation they are carrying?
A delta fast.
A delta fibers are fast fibers with sharp pain and C fibers are unmyelinated. Burning or dull pain is carried by C fibers. Okay, these are the two main fibers which carry the pain pathway. Okay, afferent pathway. What is the role of A beta fibers, which is not typically a pain fiber, but what is the role of A beta in blocking which one it will block? It will block the conduction by A delta or it will block the conduction by C fibers?
A delta, sir.
No. In gate control theory of pain, there are only two fibers which are involved. One is A beta fibers, which is not the regular pain conduction pathway. It conducts only the broad pressure sensation. And once that A beta fibers is stimulated, it will block the conduction by C fibers. That is what is called the closing of the gate. Okay, by stimulating the inhibitory neuron, it will close the conduction by C fibers. On the contrary, if the C fibers are stimulated, it will block the sensation from the beta fibers, which are able to stimulate the inhibitory fibers and allow the conduction to go on and make the pain perception possible. Okay, so C fiber stimulation will open the gate, A beta fiber stimulation will close the gate. Okay, that is how the answer must be written, and you must draw a thick fiber to denote that it is a beta fiber, and you must draw a thin fiber of different color to denote the C fiber, and both have to go and meet in a cell called the transmission cell, and these two should be connected by an interconnecting inhibitory neuro cell. Okay, so that is how the drawing must be made, and then you must explain in the writing that stimulation of A beta fibers. That is why whenever you get hurt, when you rub the skin near that area, you feel some relief, isn't it? Because that pain is relieved by stimulating the A beta fibers, not the A delta or C fibers. Okay, so A beta fiber stimulation will close the gate for transmission through C fibers, whereas C fiber stimulation directly will open the gate and allow the pain perception to be perceived at a higher level. Okay, that is what. So the TENS mechanism, the TENS, when you apply the electrical stimulus, it stimulates the A beta fibers, blocking the gate so that the C fiber conduction will be relieved. That is how the TENS mechanism works. Okay, right. So these are all the things that you have to ask, whether she has undergone any antenatal therapy in the form of non-pharmacological therapies, in the form of this yoga, hypnosis, exercises, breathing exercises, all these things, which will help and add on to your plan of labor analgesia, which you may start after the patient goes into proper labor with the regular contractions and pain. Okay?
Okay.
Right. Then what are the things you should inform her and get a consent from her for your plan of labor analgesia? What are all the things you should tell the patient? What are the options that are available? How will you explain that to the patient? See, normally we are not in unfortunately, our society, we are not practicing labor analgesia in a huge way in many of the centers. Only selected centers with the main obstetric load, they are doing this work, and majority of the obstetricians don't believe in this. That is the unfortunate thing about this. So there is no actual antenatal clinic or anything to discuss with the patient and plan what to be done for providing a pain-free labor for the patient. Okay, so you should get an idea as youngsters. In future you can plan and set up a nice obstetric labor pain unit or a center, so that you can provide a painless labor and painless delivery for the mothers. Okay, so if you want to plan that, what are the options you will give the patient about relieving the pain once she goes into labor? In other words, if the theory question is asked, what are the options of analgesia that you can offer to a patient who has gone into labor, and how will you plan that analgesia? For that, what is the first thing that you should know to plan what type of analgesia you can provide the patient once the labor has started?
Systemic medication.
Should you know the stages of labor?
Yes, sir.
First
What,
stage,
how do you,
second stage,
how
third
do you,
stage.
how do you define, and what are the stages of labor, and what is the first stage of labor?
Onset of regular uterine contractions
To?
to full dilatation of cervix,
Dilatation of
sir.
cervix.
Very
Second
good.
stage from full cervical dilatation to delivery of the fetus. Stage 3 from delivery of the fetus to the delivery of the placenta, sir.
Excellent. Very good. So which stage requires the most important pain relief?
Second stage, sir.
Second stage, not the first stage.
First and second stage.
First stage, the first stage is going to be the most prolonged one, and that is the time during which the mother is going to gradually have more and more severe pain, isn't it? So that is the longest period. How do you classify the first stage into? Is there any subdivision in the first stage itself? Eh? First stage can be divided into latent phase and active phase,
Active
especially if the mother is a primey. Will she, once she start the labor pains, will she deliver within 2 hours or 3 hours?
No, sir.
Majority of the time it takes a long time, almost 18 to 24 hours it may take, isn't it? So initially the contractions will be very slow and it will not occur very frequently also. It will be of short duration at a long interval, but gradually as the labor progresses, the contractions will become more and more frequent and more severe in intensity, so that the lower segment stretches and then the cervical dilatation also happens. Okay, so initially it will be what is called the latent or hidden phase. Then it will pick up as the cervical dilatation progresses. It will go on to become more
Active.
frequent and become active. Okay, so what is the plan that you can give or tell the patient that what are all the options she has during the latent phase and what are all the options she has during the active phase of first stage of labor?
Sir, intravenous analgesia can be given in latent phase of
Intravenous analgesia with what? What drug?
opiates.
Opioids. Okay.
Any inhaled analgesia like volatile anesthetics can be given, sir.
Very good. Can you advise parenteral analgesics during the active phase of labor, first stage of labor? Supposing mother is having severe pain, and can you advocate opioids during the active phase of labor when the cervical dilatation has gone to say 8 centimeters or 4 finger breadths?
No, sir.
Why? See, these are all the basic concepts that we should have clearly in our mind, so that we will not cause any harm to mother as well as the fetus. Now is the ideal time to ask the question: what is the reason or what is the concept behind providing painless labor or painless delivery for a mother? All these years, mothers have been delivering, suffering the pain. Why suddenly we are now more interested in having a painless delivery or a painless labor for the mother? What are the reasons? What are the advantages we gain by doing this?
Patient can
Actually-
experience the uterine contractions without pain, sir.
Okay. No.
There is one.
See, you
there is-
compare one lady where she is not given any pain relief. Okay, she suffers and goes through the natural process of uterine contraction, painful labor, and delivers the baby. Another lady is given full protection from the pain caused by the labor and delivery. What will be the difference between these two as far as the maternal symptoms are concerned and the fetal symptoms are concerned?
So
Which baby
when we
will-
provide pain, when we provide pain relief to the patient, we stop the adverse effect of the painful labors.
And that is what I am asking. What are all the adverse effects that you are going to block or
Actually,
stop?
when the patient is in active labor, she hyperventilate, and because
Very
of
good.
hyperventilation, there is a hypocarbia leading to alkalosis. So
Very
oxygen
good.
hemoglobin dissociation curve is shifted to left, and there
Very
is less
good.
delivery of oxygen to the mother and to the fetus.
Very
That is
good.
one thing.
Okay. Very good.
Then there
Any
is a
stress
then release of
responses?
catecholamines, and release of catecholamines leads to the increase in blood pressure, which is not desirable in a patient who is having hypertension or cardiac diseases.
Very good. What
And
will happen
because
to the
of
uterine blood flow?
Uterine blood flow is decreased during the intense labor pain, sir.
Intense labor pain.
It increases the chances of obstruction
Fetal
or prolonged
hypoxia
labor.
will happen.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm.
Fetal
So,
acidosis can occur because of lactic acidosis, which is due to the active
will it be
skeletal.
fetal acidosis or will it be first maternal acidosis? Because you said
First
it will be
maternal
respiratory.
acidosis.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. What is double bore effect? Hmm? Whatever you said is now pathological. What is normal happening in the transfer of gases to the from the mother to the fetus? How is the fetus getting in its oxygenation and how is it eliminating its carbon dioxide?
Because of increase in
Hmm?
the oxygen dissociation curve shifted to the left in the fetal.
Why normally in normal
Because-
physiology of pregnancy, please listen to me. Normal physiology of pregnancy, what will be the normal respiratory rate and what will be the status of carbon dioxide in the healthy mother? Do they slightly
The
hyperventilate?
respiratory, yeah, they hyperventilate, sir.
Yeah, so their
They
PCO2 is slightly lower than normal non-pregnant woman, correct? Why is this? Why nature has made that pregnant women should slightly have a mild hyperventilation and their PCO2 should be below 40, 35, around 35 only, normally. What is the reason?
To increase oxygen delivery to the fetus.
Is it for
increase the
oxygen delivery to the patient? Is it because, see, if it is if it is alkalosis with a hyperventilation and reduced carbon dioxide, will the ODC curve shift to the right or left?
To the left.
Shift to the left, okay?
Left.
Then how will oxygen delivery occur to the fetus? Is it because for
It's
oxygen
a reverse
delivery?
phenomenon in the fetus.
Pardon?
Reverse phenomenon in the fetus.
Reverse phenomena. What do you mean by reverse phenomena?
So fetal hemoglobin will increase the
No, no,
hemoglobin.
no. The question is why mothers have a slightly lower carbon dioxide level in their blood compared to normal non-pregnant women. Is it because to deliver oxygen or some other purpose? That is as simple as that question. Is the fetus breathing to eliminate the carbon dioxide it produces by its metabolism?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So there is no lung function in the intrauterine life of the fetus, but it is having the carbon dioxide level at the same rate of 40 as the mother has. Okay. So if the mother is also going to have 40 millimeters of mercury and fetus is also going to have 40 millimeters of mercury carbon dioxide, will there be a transfer of CO2?
No, sir.
No, that is the reason why maternal CO2 should be slightly lower to eliminate the CO2 from the fetus and not for delivering the oxygen. Please remember that. This is the basic physiological mechanism by which fetus is able to eliminate the CO2 because of the concentration gradient between the maternal blood and the placental flow. Okay, so that is how the CO2 is eliminated. Once the CO2 is eliminated, automatically oxygen will be able to come. But still, the oxygen dissociation curve will be shifted to the left, but maternal blood has got more 2,3 TBG. So that will only help in transferring the oxygen and not the carbon dioxide gradient. Please remember this basic physiology very well. And double Bohr effect, that is the question that I asked you, is nothing but this transfer of carbon dioxide and uptake of oxygen is what is called the double Bohr effect at the fetal circulation level. What is double Haldane effect? The same process occurring at the lung level of the mother is called double Haldane. Please remember, these are some of the questions that may be suddenly asked in the examination. Okay, so double Bohr effect is taking place at the placenta level for transfer of carbon dioxide from the fetus to the mother and transfer of oxygen from the mother to the fetus. And double Haldane effect happens at the lung of the mother, where carbon dioxide will be given up and oxygen will be taken up. Okay, so this is a point that you have to remember, right? So if you allow the patient to suffer from labor pain, one of the compensatory mechanisms will always pain will induce tachypnea and hypopnea. They will breathe very heavily and the carbon dioxide will be washed out and maternal blood will become more respiratory alkalotic side, and that will prevent the shift of oxygen further. Already there will be a small decrease in the shift because of the leftward shift in the natural process, and once it becomes worsened, the oxygen delivery to the fetus will be much more reduced, and there will be a compensatory metabolic acidosis happening in the mother because of the acute respiratory alkalosis. After some time, if the pain is prolonged and the labor gets prolonged, maternal acidosis will happen, and that acidosis will get transferred to the fetus also. Okay, so these are all the ill effects that we want to avoid by providing adequate pain relief to the mother, so that we will have a healthy baby with a good APGAR score born with good physiological functions. Okay, so that may be the question that may be asked. What is the reason for that? Why in the earlier days people thought that mothers should not get any pain relief and they should suffer and go through this pain to deliver their children? What was the wrong concept people were holding? You remember any stories where people have been made to believe that if only they suffer, they will have something towards the baby? More affection to the baby.
Yes.
In Tamil movies, they used to say, "நான் எவ்வளவு பாடுபட்டு உன்னை பெத்து வளர்த்தேன்னு சொல்றாங்கல்ல." That is how, sorry for those who don't understand Tamil, it is the mother will usually say, "How I labored to get you and how I brought you. Now you are not looking after me." This will be the mother's cry in the old age, you know. So that is how people thought the mother will have more affection only when she suffers the pain and then delivers the baby. Okay, so coming back to the stage 1 latent phase, the options will be to go for parenteral analgesics in the form of opioids or inhalation anesthetic agents, right? So what are the inhalation anesthetic agents of choice?
Entanox,
Entanox.
50%
Entanox.
oxygen and 50% nitrogen.
Very good. Why is the name Entanox given to that?
It's a mixture of nitrous
No,
oxide and
that she
oxygen.
has already said it is a 50% oxygen and but why that name N2OX is given? What is the spelling of Entanox?
ENTONOX.
What is NTO? N2O. Is it the formula for nitrous oxide?
N2, yes.
Isn't it? So the name Entanox is nothing but the formula N2O, isn't it? Nitrous oxide. Okay, so that has been put in English alphabets. N2O is the name because of the formula. Okay, so Entanox cylinder, the questions on Entanox may be asked. So it is a mixture of 50% oxygen and 50% nitrous oxide. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Is it being used in India? Are you aware of any center using it in India?
Private
No, sir.
setups they are using, sir.
They are using. Have you ever seen the cylinder? What is the color of the cylinder of Entanox?
Blue shoulder and black.
It can be either blue body with white shoulder or white body with a blue shoulder. Anyway, it can be manufactured. It is manufactured in both ways to indicate that there is a mixture of both oxygen and nitrous oxide. Okay, so this mixture, what is the peculiarity about it?
Sir, at the temperature 6 degrees centigrade, the nitrous oxide is in liquid form. So sometimes the oxygen is utilized before the nitrous oxide, and hypoxic mixture can be delivered to the patient. So
Okay.
Is before.
That's
something
one of the
called pointing
complications. What is,
complication.
now that you have mentioned it, what is pointing effect? What is the spelling of pointing?
Sir, it is basically critical temperature of two gases when they
No.
are
Please answer to the question and then proceed. What is the spelling for pointing?
Point.
P-O-I-N-T or something else?
POYN.
P-O-Y-I-N-T. Pointing. P-O-Y-I-N-T-I-N-G. Okay, pointing effect. Why is it? Does it mean that it's something you are pointing to somebody, or is it a name? Why is it called pointing effect? It is after the person who described that phenomena. Okay, his name is John Henry Poynting. He is a British physicist and mathematician. Okay, so what did he describe? See, normally oxygen is presented in the cylinder in which form? Gaseous form or liquid form? Gaseous
Compressed
form.
gases.
Okay. Whereas the nitrous oxide, is it in the liquid form or in the gaseous form?
Liquid form, sir.
Liquid form. So it vaporizes, it evaporates to become a vapor or a gas. Okay. So when you mix both, which have different, what is critical temperature of a volatile anesthetic agent or a gaseous agent?
It's
What is the
vaporized.
definition of what is the definition of a critical temperature?
Temperature at or above which
The temperature.
The vaporization takes place, sir.
Vaporization takes place. The maximum temperature above which you cannot compress it into a liquid. Okay. Below that you can compress and make it into a liquid. Okay. So the critical temperature of nitrous oxide, what is the critical temperature? It is almost like room temperature, 36 degrees centigrade. Okay. Whereas what is the critical temperature of oxygen? Minus 119. Okay. So when you mix both these things, it attains a new temperature. What is the name for that new temperature? Hey, Pavitra, your mic is not on. I'm not able to hear you.
Sir,
Pseudo critical temperature.
It is called a pseudo critical temperature. Okay. So how do you get this mixture to remain as a gas? Because normally nitrous oxide is presented only as a liquid. But how can you make it into a gas and stay like a gas? By bubbling through the oxygen through that. Okay. So when you bubble the oxygen under pressure through the nitrous oxide liquid, nitrous oxide also becomes a gas, and both of them remain in the gaseous form at a different temperature. What is the pseudo-critical temperature of Entanox? It is minus 6 degrees centigrade. Okay. So from 36, it becomes minus 6 for both oxygen and nitrous oxide. For oxygen, it is minus 119. For nitrous oxide, it is plus 36. From these two temperatures, the new combination of 50% oxygen and 50% nitrous oxide attains a new temperature at minus 6 degrees centigrade, which is called the pseudo-critical temperature. Okay. Can you give an analogy to this? Something similar. Two compounds mixed together, changing their melting points. Emla cream. Have you heard of Emla cream? Where you mix 2.5% lignocaine and 2.5% prilocaine, both having different melting temperatures, attain a new temperature. Okay, something similar to that. This is a different phenomenon. Okay, so if you say the word Entanox, you must be ready to answer all these questions. Why it is called Entanox? Who is the person who described what is called the Poynting effect? What is critical temperature and what is pseudo-critical temperature? And this problem what Rakesh Kumar said about oxygen separating and staying at the top and nitrous oxide remaining in the bottom. first delivering more oxygen and later delivering more nitrous oxide, producing a hypoxic mixture. What is that phenomena called? Is there any name for that? Huh? When will it happen? Now you know that the pseudocritical temperature of this combination is -6 degrees centigrade. Okay. Supposing you store this cylinder at -15 or -20 degrees in a very cold atmosphere. Can this happen? This separation from the gaseous form, the nitrous oxide become liquid and go to the bottom, and oxygen remain as a gas and occupy the top. This is called lamination. Okay, this name for that separation is called lamination. And whenever you store the Entonox cylinders in temperatures less than -6, like -15, -20, which is much more colder, how do you prevent this separation and the ill effects of hypoxic mixture getting delivered? What are the things you should do?
By shaking the cylinder, sir.
You can heat the cylinder. You can put it in a water bath to 37 degrees for 15 minutes. Then it will again regain the gaseous form. Or you can keep it at room temperature of 15 degrees for 2 hours. And then before using it, you invert it upside down 3 times to make the mixture again into gaseous form without nitrous oxide segregating or separating into a liquid form at the bottom. Okay? So these are all the points that you have to remember. And how is it delivered to the mother? When Entonox is now still used in UK by the midwives for providing labor analgesia in the early phases of labor. They tend and early active phase of the first stage of labor. How is it delivered? How can you set the concentration correctly? What is the peculiarity of the valve system which is incorporated in the Entonox cylinder?
Demand valve.
Very good, excellent. It is called the demand valve. So what will happen? What is the peculiarity or what is the mechanism of action of the demand valve? What do you understand by the term demand valve?
Yes,
Only when the mother makes an
Mother
inspiratory
demands it will
effect,
open.
okay, only when there is a negative pressure created by the inspiration of the mother, the valve will open and the gas will deliver. Whereas in your anesthesia machines, it is a continuous flow machine. Whereas the Entonox cylinder delivery system has a tubing attached with the demand valve which will open only during the inspiratory phase when there is a negative pressure created. And if the mother becomes sedated and their respiratory effect goes down, what will happen to the inspiratory effort? It will decrease, isn't it? Her breathing will be shallow. So automatically it will shut off. What is this? It will afford some protection, or is it not protective?
It will give protection.
It is a protective mechanism. Okay? Right. So how should the mother be taught to inhale this? When should she start inhaling this gas? Is there any coaching you should give to the mother how to inhale, or she can just put the mask on her face and keep on inhaling? Should she coincide with the contractions?
At the end of
Yes, sir, with the contraction.
She must inhale as deeply as possible during the height of the pain or height of the contraction. Okay. At the time, if she inhales, she will take in the gas, and that will provide a very good pain relief. On the contrary, as the contraction starts, if she takes it the early phase, during the peak contraction, she will not have adequate pain relief. Why? Why should this instruction to breathe according to the severity of the pain is very important? Is the pain relief given by nitrous oxide, it is prolonged or very short duration?
Short duration.
So it should coincide with the peak of the pain. Okay, that is the reason why mother should be taught how to inhale the gas maximum during the height of the pain, so that she will get the full benefit. If she inhales it early, the effect will wear off within 2 to 3 seconds, and she will experience the severity of the pain. So she should not inhale it during the early mild pain state, but she should take a deep inspiration during the height of the pain to get the maximum pain relief. Okay? And what will happen if, what are the unwanted side effects of this Entonox inhalation?
Drowsiness.
Drowsiness, very good. If she goes on inhaling, she may feel a bit drowsy, right? Very good. Then
Nausea.
nausea,
Nausea.
excellent. Nausea and
Yes.
vomiting. Hematogenic. Nitrous oxide is hematogenic. Okay, right. Then
There may be a loss of consciousness, sir.
Yes.
yeah, drowsiness, but that loss, so that much of consciousness loss will not happen because a very mild anesthetic. Drowsiness is possible, accepted. So if the patient is drowsy, she cannot be ambulant. That is the disadvantage with that. Okay, and she can have nausea and vomiting. Sometimes they can develop headache. And what will happen to the gas-filled spaces in the body if you inhale nitrous oxide?
They will
Ah,
increase.
She has some mild intestinal
Bulle.
ileus. She has not passed flatus or motion because of the labor pain. What can happen to the intestinal gas?
It will increase, sir.
All the cavities will increase.
Increase.
The middle ear cavity will increase in size. Okay, so
Okay,
these are the disadvantages of the nitrous oxide. Okay.
Entonox. Okay.
And
Will it
there's
cause any
pressure
alteration?
position.
Will it cause any fetal abnormality by giving Entonox?
It will
At
lead
this
to
stage,
pulmonary
at this stage,
hypertension.
no, it will not cause
No,
any
sir.
fetal
No.
abnormality because only in the early stages during the first trimester, if there is an inhalation of nitrous oxide, there is a possibility that DNA synthesis can be affected in the fetus and that can produce a problem. Whereas giving it as a pain relief with oxygen during the labor stage, during the first stage of labor, will not cause any problem in the fetus or any developmental anomaly in the fetus. Okay, that is the point that you have to remember, right? In addition to Entonox, what are the other combinations of inhalation agent you know of?
Sevoflurane, sir.
Cevox.
Sevoflurane and oxygen, Cevox. So we have Entonox, which is a combination of nitrous oxide and oxygen. We have Cevox, which is a combination of sevoflurane and oxygen. Do you know any other ox other than these two? Have you heard of Heliox?
Yes.
Helium plus oxygen.
Oxygen. Yes.
Okay, right. What is the proportion in Cevox, which is also given as an inhalation agent?
0.8% sir,
0.8%.
0.8% sevoflurane in 100%
With
oxygen.
oxygen.
100%
Okay, very good. Right. Okay. So why they are using sevoflurane and not desflurane or isoflurane or enflurane?
Sir, it's less irritant to the airway and it's a sweet smelling.
Desflurane is irritant to airway, but isoflurane and halothane, all these are not very irritant. Desflurane I accept. Relaxation of what?
The uterus will be less.
All volatile anesthetics have got a
Because-
dose-dependent relaxation on the uterine wall, which will be taken in fast and eliminated fast. Next to desflurane is only sevoflurane. Okay, wash in and wash out is much faster.
Faster.
Okay, so we don't want a prolonged effect. We want it to be giving a pain relief or some sedative effect during the pain, and then patient must become conscious so that she can cooperate for further progress of the labor. Okay, so that is the reason why we chose a agent which has got a very short duration of action. Just like nitrous oxide, it also has got a short duration of action. So these are the two things that were given in the modern days as inhalation anesthetic agents. Now coming back to your parenteral analgesics, what are all the drugs that you can offer to the patient for pain relief during the first stage of labor? That too in the early latent phase. The patient is intolerant to pain and she wants absolutely no pain. What are all the drugs that you can offer and what are the advantages and disadvantages? First enumerate the names of the drugs that you can give and then
Morphine.
describe. Morphine. First one is a morphine. Very good. Is that the one described in the books?
Pethidine.
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 Why do you start with morphine? Okay, please, in the exam, don't start like this. Why morphine is not the ideal drug?
Respiratory
It's
depression.
slow
You
of
know
action.
that. It has got severe respiratory depression
Yes.
potency. It has got nausea, vomiting. It can produce constipation. Okay, so many complications are there. Even though this is the best analgesic till today, we should not say morphine in the pregnant woman, especially laboring woman. It can cross the placenta and produce a very serious depression in the fetus as well as in the mother. Okay. So pethidine is comparatively safer. What is the dose of pethidine? How much you
100
will
to
give?
150 milligram intramuscular, sir.
Intramuscular, how many, at what frequency? Supposing she is in first stage of labor for 12 hours. Will one dose be sufficient? Or at what interval you can repeat the drug? That is the question. Indirectly, I am asking you what is the time interval at which we can repeat. Supposing the labor gets prolonged, say for 18 hours, 24 hours, primary, it can happen. So after how many hours she will start feeling the pain again?
2 to 3 hours.
2 to 3
After
hours,
2 to
sir.
3
Yeah,
hours.
maximum it will be 3 to 4 hours. Okay.
4
So
hours.
intramuscular you can give every 4 hours, or intravenous. What is the dose?
25 to 50
25 to
mg.
50 milligram. Okay, based on the body weight and the patient's tolerance, you can give it intravenously and intramuscularly at this dosage and repeat it at every 3 to 4 hours. For intravenous, you maybe have to repeat it much more earlier because the peak effect will come on immediately and the wear out also will be much more faster compared to intramuscular. Okay, what are the disadvantages of pethidine?
Sir, it has got an active metabolite norpethidine,
Okay.
which can
Before
cause
that,
respiratory depression in
We
the
remain as more
fetus.
amount in fetus will cause fetal
Yeah.
hypoxia, sir. Fetal depression will be more.
first thing is nausea and vomiting. See, all opioids have got a common potential to produce nausea and vomiting. Okay, so mother already suffering from the labor pain. You give something to relieve the pain and she goes on puking all the time. It is more uncomfortable for them. Okay, so that is why the older obstetricians still continue to give a combination to avoid or prevent this nausea and vomiting. What is that combination?
Phenergan.
What is the Phenergan is the commercial name. What is the pharmacology? Promethazine. Okay.
Promethazine, sir.
So they combine with pethidine and promethazine. Some people still use, old obstetricians, they will always combine promethazine with pethidine to avoid this nausea and vomiting. Any other advantages in combining promethazine with pethidine?
Less
Additive,
histamine release, sir.
Huh?
Less histamine release, less pruritus, sir.
Less histamine release, less pruritus, very good. So less reduces
And
the nausea and
antiemetic-
vomiting.
Antiemetic
Antiemetic.
effect.
That is the reason why we are adding it. Antiemetic is one main property. Pruritus, especially pruritus of the nose, which happens with the opioids, that can be reduced. Then, is it a bronchodilator or a bronchoconstrictor?
Bronchodilator.
Bronchodilator. So it will help the mother to breathe more easily. Does it act synergistically with pethidine or it is antagonistic to pethidine?
Synergistic.
It
has
has a
sedative.
synergistic effect, so you can reduce the dose of pethidine. Okay, these are all the advantages of adding promethazine to pethidine: antiemetic, antipruritic, and antihistaminic, bronchodilator, and it has got a sedative effect, and it synergistic with pethidine to help you to reduce the dose of pethidine so that the fetal transmission and fetal depression will be much more less. Okay? That is the
And it's
idea. of
anti-allergic
combining.
also, sir.
That
It's
is
anti-allergic
antihistaminic.
also.
That's what I said. Antihistaminic is anti-allergic. Both are same. Okay, right. So these are the things that you have to remember about pethidine. Okay. What are the other options other than pethidine?
Fentanyl and sufentanil, sir.
Fentanyl and sufentanil. Okay. Fentanyl IM or IV?
IV
It's
and
a
both IV and
IV
it's
or
IV
infusion.
infusion.
Okay.
Infusion.
So you can give bolus IV or you can give a continuous infusion. What is the dose for bolus IV?
It's around 10 to 15 milligrams.
25 to 50
50
micrograms.
micrograms.
Okay? Or you
Microgram.
can give, or you can give 0.1 to 0.2 microgram per kg per hour.
Kg.
Okay, that is the infusion rate that you can think of. Okay, right.
Okay, sir.
What is the newer opioid that is considered as a newer advances in labor analgesia?
Remifentanil, sir.
Remifentanil infusion. Okay, what is the advantage of remifentanil?
It's ultra short acting, sir. It's a synthetic.
Very good.
And less side effects of opioids, sir.
Very good. What is the mechanism of its metabolism? Tissue esterases. Okay, the tissue esterases help in metabolic. See, once you may name a drug in the exam, you must be prepared to answer all the pharmacology questions regarding that. Please be aware of that. Otherwise, best way is to not to mention that and get caught. Okay, so that is, if you want to pass the exam, you be thorough with whatever you commit in the exam. Okay, right. So, what is the dose of remifentanil that you can give? Bolus as well as infusion? Mostly it is given as only an infusion, 0.1 to 0.2 microgram per kg per hour. Okay, the same dose that as you are giving fentanyl, that is the dose at which you have to give remifentanil also. Right. So, any other opioid other than this pethidine, fentanyl, sufentanil, not alfentanil, all these things are not available in our country, and remifentanil also at present not available. Any other drug which can be tried, which are available in India now?
Nalbuphine, sir.
Nalbuphine,
Nalbuphine,
butorphanol,
butorphanol, tramadol. These three have been
Butorphanol.
tried. Okay. So these also have similar profile. Okay. Only thing the drugs dosages are little variant, but the same side effects and same nausea, vomiting, all these things can happen. But they provide pain relief for say 2 to 3 hours like that. Okay. So the same points that you can repeat again for all that. We will not waste time on that. What about the newer drug, ketamine? What is the role of ketamine in providing analgesia for a laboring mother during the first stage of labor? How do you administer? What are the routes of administration of ketamine?
intravenous.
Intravenous. What is the dose?
0.5, less than 0.5. 0.5.
Normal anesthetic dose intravenous is 1 to 2 milligram per kg per
kg.
Isn't it? So if you give, we don't want to produce anesthesia in this patient. We want only analgesia. So 1/10 of the anesthetic dose will be the analgesic dose. Okay. So 100 to 200 micrograms per kg per hour will be more than sufficient to produce analgesia in these patients. Can ketamine be given intrathecally?
Yes, sir. Adjuvant it can be.
As an adjuvant, as a sole pain relieving drug, can it be given?
Preservative free can be given, sir.
Yes, you have to give only preservative free, but can it be administered as a preservative free drug for pain relief as a solo drug?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can give that, but the action will be only for about an hour and a half. Okay, so the duration will not be prolonged. So it is better to give it as an intravenous infusion. What are the unwanted effects of ketamine? Even at this low dose, which is given as an analgesic dose, what are the side effects?
It causes prolonged
hallucinations.
depression effect on the neonate.
Prolonged depression effect on the neonate. Okay.
High FM ratio, sir.
Sir, the dose required to produce good analgesia drug for liver analgesia will be higher. So, and the loss of consciousness can take place, and there is a risk of aspiration also, and it can cause hallucinations, sir. And it increases the intra-abdominal pressure, so there is a risk of aspiration. So it's not a recommended drug nowadays, sir.
What about the effect on the cardiovascular system?
Sir,
Hypertension,
it increases
tachycardia.
yeah.
That is the first effect that you have to say.
Yeah.
As soon as you give it, you will feel some tachycardia occurring and pressure going. After that, only all the other effects will come. So you must know the
It is a
priority.
secretion,
Which one you have to say in the exam first, and then which one to say last. Okay. So that is the best way to impress the examiner. If you say the sequential way of the complications or side effects, that will be much more impressive than vaguely saying one late complication first and the first complication last. Okay, so that is the way to pass your examination. Impress the examiner by providing the correct answer first. Right. Okay. So ketamine is another choice that you have. Right. So after all these parenteral drugs and inhalation anesthetic agents, now we come to the active phase of labor. What are the choices that you have for the mother to be given?
Sir, we have epidural, spinal, combined spinal epidural analgesia, sir.
That means you can say neuroaxial blockades. Okay, in one terminology, you can say they can have a variety of neuroaxial blockades. Okay, so the gold standard or conventional method has been epidural analgesia. Okay, so supposing you suggest to this lady that we will plan for in the early phases of labor, we will plan for inhalation or intramuscular or intravenous analgesic agents. And when you go to the active stage of labor, we will plan for neuroaxial blockade in the form of epidural anesthesia. And supposing you are asked as a new consultant in a hospital to set up a labor analgesia ward or room, what are the how will you set up a labor analgesia room? What are the things you require there? Supposing you get a lot of volume of mothers coming for normal delivery, all of them want painless labor, and you plan to set up a labor analgesia unit there. What are all the things? How will you set up a labor analgesia unit?
I will ensure that all essential drugs and equipments are available for resuscitation of the patient if some complications occurs there. I will make sure that oxygen is available and it is in plant's a good supply. I will make sure that the good quality laryngoscope is there, and there is a provision for challenging the difficult intubation situation if it occurs.
Very good.
I will ensure that all essential cardiac drugs are also available there in that setup, and the staff is familiar to handle all these critical situations if they arises. And
see, repeatedly in the theory exam, if you go through your old question banks, you will find, describe how you will set up an ICU, describe the how to set up an ICU in a hospital, or how to set up a critical care unit in your hospital, or how to set up a pain clinic in your hospital. This is a very commonly asked question in your theory paper. Similarly, if there is a question how to set up a labor pain unit or a ward, then first thing you start with the space, how much of a big room you require. Okay, that is number one. Then you say whatever you have said. I'm not saying that it is a wrong method, but again, presentation should be more impressive. So you require a separate room which should be very close to the operating room, so that if there is any problem, you can immediately shift the patient to the OT. Okay, so it is better that it is placed near a operation room with an adequate space for movement of personnel and equipment, and there should be availability of airway securing equipments and resuscitation equipments. In one sentence, you can finish that. Instead of saying that all essential drugs, cardiac drugs, and vasoactive drugs, instead of that, you can say all life-saving essential drugs and airway equipment should be available. And third thing is proper personnel should be there, and of course, monitoring goes along with the airway and essential drugs. So space, equipments, personnel. These are the three things that you should say as a formation or setting up a labor analgesia room or a unit. Okay, right. So in that, supposing you plan for epidural in this lady, what are all the things you have to tell her as a information to get her consent. Can you just say we'll put some injection in the back and you won't feel any pain and you will be totally happy? Or will you have to say how it is performed and what are all the problems that can happen and how to go about what she will be feeling? Everything will you tell?
We will explain the procedure to the
Procedure.
patient.
Okay.
We will take her consent. We
Hmm.
will tell her alternative methods of the pain relief which are available.
Very good.
And we will also explain to her what
Hmm.
are the complications which are expected.
Okay, very good. Right, excellent. So
And
now,
I will take the detailed history from the patient regarding
Okay.
any whether she is on any drugs which are whether she is on blood thinners also, whether
Very
she
good.
has got local infection also,
Very good.
whether she is suffering from fever or sepsis. So I will
Very
like
good.
to take that history also. And I will
Airway
like to
assessment
say
should
whether
be
she
done.
has undergone any spine surgery also in the
Ve-
past.
Very
So
good.
if there are the contraindication for the epidural,
Will you
I
ask
will
for
rule
any
out those.
neurological problems in the
Yes,
patient?
I will ask for the any existing neurological deficit that patient might be suffering,
Uh,
because
Any
later on it
neurological
can be attributed.
diseases? Any neurological diseases which are very important history-wise? Any particular neurological disease?
Poliomyelitis, sir.
Poliomyelitis. Epilepsy. See, you must ask for any
Epilepsy.
history of epilepsy. Okay, that is a
Epilepsy,
very
sir.
important. Why the history of epilepsy should be available, whether it is present or not?
Accidental intravascular injection of
No,
local
convulsions
anesthetics
can
can
occur, sir.
has
Right.
more seizure.
Right. Now this will lead to one question. Supposing you have performed an epidural in a patient who is in labor, and as soon as you have completed your injection, patient throws a fit. What are all the causes of that?
Sir, it may be due to the patient may be allergic to local anesthetic agent.
Allergy, will it produce a fit?
Uh,
First time I'm hearing local anesthetic
It's not
allergy
a-
with amide
no,
is
it's a
very,
reaction. It's a reaction to local anesthetics, basically, sir. No?
How can it be a
Toxicity. I mean to
reaction?
say toxicity. It's a toxicity, basically.
Toxicity.
Systemic
You
toxicity.
are given just 4 or 6 ml. Will it produce a toxicity? So first immediately you will blame yourself, isn't it?
Yes.
That whatever you have done only caused this fit. Or is there a way to classify the answer and tell what could be the possibilities? Why you want to take the blame straight away on you, just saying that you have produced the toxicity? Huh?
What's the seizure threshold?
So can classify that into neurological and non-neurological. Okay. So patient, there are so many things. Of course, this is only a theoretical discussion. I'm not saying that this is the reason why. This is how you have to discuss that in the exam. Supposing they ask you what are all the problems that you can say, if lady fitting after a epidural dose completion, then it can be first classified into obstetric and non-obstetric causes. Okay.
So,
And again, it can be classified into neurological, non-neurological, and lastly, anesthetic related causes. Okay. The examples of neurological obstetric conditions include not
eclampsia.
identified eclampsia, subarachnoid hemorrhage, or intracranial hemorrhage. Okay. These are the 3 neurological obstetric complications. The non-neurological complications can be earlier pre-existing epilepsy, which nobody has taken a proper history, or a patient having an intracranial mass with totally no symptoms at all, or a patient who had an infection in the central nervous system without any exhibition of systemic effects. If these are remote possibilities which can also be the cause of that, or it can be a respiratory condition where patient could have suffered from hypoxia. You put her in the lateral and then bend her and she is choking and suffocating, not breathing properly. There has been an hypoxia, or it can be a hypercarbia because of say I earlier given opioids and other things which can also precipitate, or it can be metabolic like hypoglycemia or hyponatremia. Okay. So these are all the possibilities you have to think of other than the anesthetic related. And in anesthetic related, there are only two things. One is accidental intrathecal placement of the small volume which you give, which could have gone up and produced a total spinal, and the patient could have arrested because or thrown a fit because of the hypoxemia to the brain. Or it can be direct intravascular injection, as you said, and could have caused a immediate rise in the serum level and caused a irritation and produce the fit. Okay, so this is how the answer should be explained in the examination, and don't immediately take the entire blame on yourself. Okay, so this is the answer that you have to give. Right, so you have to set up the labor analgesia room like this and then try to sort out the issues. Right, now coming to the neuraxial blockade, what are the nerve roots that have to be blocked during first stage of labor, and what are the nerve roots that have to be blocked for the second and third stage?
For first stage, T10 to L1 have to be blocked, sir.
Very good. What
For
type of
second,
fibers are surveying this? T10 to L1. What type of nerve fibers or afferent fibers are there, and what type of pain it is called?
visceral type of pain.
It is
sir.
called the visceral type of pain and carried by the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Very good.
Parasympathetic.
Okay. What about the second stage?
S2, S3, S4, sir. Somatoform.
It is called somatic pain. Somatic pain. Okay. It is a somatic pain due to the stretching of the lower segment of the uterus, vagina and perineum. Okay. So that is how you have. So how do you plan your central neuraxial blockade? Supposing you put in an epidural catheter at L2, L3 or L1, L2. Will it block the sacral fibers also to take care of the stage 2 or the second stage of labor pain?
It's very good, sir.
Will it take care? Yes or no? Normally, when you give an epidural for surgery in a non-pregnant or for a laparotomy or something, how do you manage? You give a large volume, isn't it? So that it will spread both up and down and block all the segments. But in labor, we are giving very small volumes. Why we are restricting the volume?
To avoid motor blocks, sir.
Very good. That we are doing by reducing the concentration. And we want only the segments to be blocked. This is called the segmental block. We don't want an extensive block going into the thoracic or lower lumbar and sacral. Okay. So we initially produce a block which is required only from T10 to L1 to block the visceral pain of the first stage of labor. Okay. So what are the dosage? How would you inject it and how do you maintain the pain relief? What are the various options you have? Supposing you have introduced an epidural catheter at L1, L2, lumbar epidural catheter has been sited. Okay. How do you first give the dose? What is the role of test dose in a laboring patient? How do you adjust the bolus or top-up dose? What are the criteria for that?
Sir, test dose is given to rule out any intravascular injection of the drug and to rule out the intrathecal spinal.
Very good. Oh, very good. Okay.
So normally we give 3 ml of 1.5% xylotane along with the 1:2 lakh.
2 lakh.
Adrenaline. Okay. What is the controversy hovering over this test dose? Some people say test dose is useless. It is not going to reveal anything. Some people say no, you should give.
Patient in labor will have already will have increase in heart rate, sir. So there will be a confusion whether
it is caused by the
tachycardia is caused by the test dose or by the pain, labor pain, sir.
Very good. So that is the controversy.
Yes, if the patient is on beta blocker, then the concept of test dose cannot be
cannot be
at
elicited.
such times.
Very good. So these are the reasons why there is a controversy whether you should really give a test dose or not. But some people continue to do that, some people don't do that. What is the
So
drug of
after-
choice for producing the analgesia?
Sir, bupivacaine can be given.
Bupivacaine.
It is easily available, sir, and
Okay.
it is cost effective also. And in the doses that we give for the liver analgesia, the toxic effect, cardiotoxic effect are not much seen also. So normally we give it in a dose of 0.6 to 5%.
Very good.
To
Or
0.1 to 5%.
0.125%.
So initially we give, sir, 5 ml. We wait for 3 to 5 minutes. Then again 5 ml of the drug is given.
Okay. Right. Very good.
Then it is
How-
a 5
how-
to 10
how
ml
this,
per hour. Infusion is given after that, sir.
Very good. How this load concentration is able to produce an effect in the pregnant woman? If you put the same 0.625 in a non-pregnant woman, will it work?
Because in
Will it
pregnant
have the
patient,
same-
we want only analgesia, sir. The anesthetic effect is-
The same concentration, if you put it in a non-pregnant woman, will it be effective? That is my question.
Sir, in pregnant patient, the sensitivity
Increase
of the drug
abdominal-
is increased. There is a less requirement of the drug to the patient.
Yes, that is the answer. Progesterone increases the sensitivity of the nerve fibers during pregnancy to the local anesthetic agents and opioids. Okay, that is the reason why we are able to achieve a good sensory block or a pain relief by the lowest concentration available. That is the answer you
And
have
also,
to give.
and also because of the engorgement of the epidural veins, the same amount of the drug is spread more in the pregnant patient.
No,
than
that is
not.
Due
for
to
the
decrease
height.
CS of
No, that is for the height. But my question is for the concentration. If there is a low concentration, it is still effective in pregnancy because of progesterone causing increased sensitivity of the nerve fibers. And also, another added factor is there is an increased production of endorphins in the mother, in the pregnant woman. Okay, compared to a non-pregnant woman, the endogenous morphine-like substances, their level is also quite high. So that also get enhanced. So this is the two reason why even the lowest concentration of your local anesthetic is able to produce a effective pain blocking by in the pregnant women. Okay, so that is what you have to give. So what are the recent advances over usage of racemic bupivacaine for blocking?
There is less cardiotoxicity in that drug, sir.
No. My question you are not understanding. What are the recent advances in usage of local anesthetic agent compared to the old conventional usage of racemic bupivacaine? If supposing you are given a choice for alternate drug, will you still continue to use only racemic bupivacaine, or would you prefer to use the newer agents which are available? That is the question.
Bupivacaine,
Levobupivacaine.
Levobupivacaine and
Okay.
ropivacaine. These are much more safer than your conventional bupivacaine. Okay.
Bupivacaine.
So that is the answer that you are supposed to give. That is the recent advance. Okay. Over the conventional racemic bupivacaine, the modern trend is to use levobupivacaine or ropivacaine.
Okay.
What is the advantage of ropivacaine?
Less cardiotoxic, sir.
Okay, very good. One. Any other reason? What is the presentation of ropivacaine?
0.2%.
We have got several presentations. We have got 2 milligram per ml, we have got 5 milligram per ml, we have got 10 milligram per ml. Okay, so there are different presentations that are available. Whereas if you take levobupivacaine, you have only 0.25 and 0.5. Okay, and you have to keep diluting it. Okay, ropivacaine is much less cardiotoxic and more available for more selective sensory block, and if you want motor block, you can have an higher concentration. That is the choice that you have with ropivacaine. Okay, that is the advantage that is the recent advancement. If they ask, you have to say these two drugs as a advantage over the conventional racemic bupivacaine. Okay, right. So what are the other options other than the regular standard epidural, continuous epidural, either as a bolus or an intermittent top-up or a continuous infusion, or patient controlled epidural analgesia. Patient themselves can select the dosage and the top ups, everything. What are the other recent advances in this technique? See, originally we start. No. With
Combined
the
spinal-
epidural itself, apart from the oldest method of first initial bolus dose, then intermittent bolus doses after a few hours when the patient regains pain and starts feeling, you give another bolus like that. That was the original method or the first method of labor analgesia when it started. First you put in a catheter, give initially as 6 to 12 ml as a first dose. Then as and when the patient says, I am feeling pain, you give another bolus of 4 to 6 ml. Like that you continue till the baby delivered, and then keep it if you want for post-op pain relief, or remove it. That is the conventional method that we were following. Then instead of doing that, what they thought was, if you give a continuous infusion, the nerves will be bathed in the solution for longer time and pain relief will be continuous instead of the patient regaining the sensation and feeling the pain and then topping up. They
Yes, sir.
started using the continuous
Background
infusion.
influence.
And then they thought patient can be herself inject the drug by what is called patient controlled epidural analgesia. Now, what is the latest trend in that? That is what I am asking.
Computer
That's a
control.
computer programmed.
This is called
background
computer
infusion.
automated integrated patient controlled epidural analgesia, CAPCEA. Okay,
It
that
is
is what I
studies
showed you in the last class also. In the local anesthetic, I showed you one picture where you can program it in the computer and set the time and dose, everything, and allow, instead of the patient pressing the button and requesting for that, the machine itself will automatically do. So these are all the advancements that have taken from the intermittent bolus to continuous infusion to patient control to computer integrated. These are the advantages. Now coming to the technique, what are the changes that have taken place? Originally, we used to identify the epidural space, thread the catheter, and then start giving the injections. What are the modifications that have been taken place in this technique of identifying the space and injections? You already said about CSC,
Sir,
combined spinal
ultrasound also.
epidural. Okay.
Ultrasound can be used.
No, that is to locate the space. I am asking you about the techniques change. Combined spinal epidural, in what way it is advantageous?
Sir, we can identify the depth of the epidural space and the space also, which space is easy to pass.
No, when you do a combined spinal epidural for labor analgesia, how do you do that, and what are the drugs that you inject?
Sir, for combined spinal epidural, it's a needle through needle technique. So,
Okay.
we, as per conventionally, we are doing this epidural technique. We first put a epidural needle and with loss of resistance or balloon technique. Or saline
Needle through
technique, we
needle
identify
technique, I agree. You have identified the subarachnoid
epidural
space, the
space.
fluid is coming. What drug are you going to inject there?
Sir, I'm going to inject a small dose of fentanyl, around 10
Yes, that is the answer. Subarachnoid, you inject a narcotic, and epidurally you give a local anesthetic. That is the reason for asking this question. Whereas when you do a combined spinal epidural for surgery, we inject a hyperbaric local anesthetic into the subarachnoid space, and for increasing the level or prolonging the duration, we inject a local anesthetic into the epidural space. On the contrary, when you want to do a combined spinal epidural for labor analgesia, after identifying the subarachnoid space, you inject the narcotic in the form of fentanyl, or what are the other options you have?
Sufentanil, sir.
அம்மா இருக்கிற ட்ரக்கை பேசுங்க இல்லாத have you ever seen sufentanil? Anything which is available now in our practice.
So neostigmine.
Neostigmine, yes, okay. But neostigmine is not very popular. Why?
Sir, centrally acting drugs.
I am asking why it is not popular. You are saying centrally acting drug. Produces severe nausea and vomiting. Okay,
Okay.
neostigmine has been almost given up because it produces severe nausea and vomiting in patients. Okay, so even though it has a good analgesic effect, it doesn't tolerate it well by the patient. Whereas
Sir,
alpha 2 agonists, do you have
clonidine, sir.
alpha 2? Clonidine and dexmedetomidine.
Dexmedetomidine.
They are very good analgesics, and at the same time produce, you can inject that drug safely into the subarachnoid space without causing any respiratory depression or anything. Even your fentanyl, if it migrates, it can produce a respiratory depression. Whereas clonidine and dexmedetomidine given subarachnoid will not cause any problem and produces good hemodynamic stability for the patient. Okay, so the three options you have for subarachnoid injection are fentanyl, clonidine, dexmedetomidine, but no hyperbaric or isobaric local anesthetic should be injected into the subarachnoid space when you do a combined spinal epidural. On the contrary, after injecting this drug, you thread the catheter and then give your diluted form of local anesthetic as you do with your sole epidural technique. Okay, that is about combined spinal epidural. Any other modification over this?
Sir, we have multi-orifice catheters also nowadays. And
That is not,
the
that
catheter
has
can
been,
be put in the spinal also, sir.
pardon?
The catheters can be put in spinal also, sir. The
Epidural?
subarachnoid catheters, sir, can be put.
That is continuous spinal. That is a different
Continuous
technique
spinal.
by itself. But when you do a combined spinal epidural, what is other modification? Apart from injecting the drug, some drug into the subarachnoid space, what is another newer modification? See, I am combining all the recent advances with the conventional method so that you can sequentially remember all these things. Have you heard of dural puncture epidural?
Epidural.
My God, that is the answer. What is dural puncture epidural and what do you do in that?
The catheter
Sir.
is threaded into the dural space, sir.
பேரே வந்து dural puncture epidural சொல்றோம். Catheter is threaded into
seepage of the local anesthetics from epidural space into the dural space, sir.
So what you do in dural puncture epidural is you identify the epidural space just like you do a combined spinal epidural. Then through the same needle you puncture the dura deliberately and identify the flow of CSF. But don't inject any drug. Simply remove that spinal needle, thread your epidural catheter and start giving the local anesthetic. Now what they have found is by injecting the local anesthetic into the epidural space, there is some migration of the local anesthetic through the puncture that you have made into the subarachnoid space, and there is an earlier onset of analgesia. That is the idea of what is called the dural puncture epidural. This is one of the short note question in your theory paper. You have to remember that you don't have to inject any drug into the subarachnoid space, but simply make a hole in the dura and take out the needle, thread the catheter into the conventionally like epidural space and then start giving the drug, and the action onset will be much more faster and lesser dose also will be required because it is migrating into the subarachnoid space. You can also reduce the dose of your local anesthetic agent. Okay, this is the third improvement. So conventional epidural with the catheter, combined spinal epidural with a drug in the subarachnoid space, 3 dural puncture epidural with no drug in the subarachnoid space and only catheterization. And lastly, there is a revival of what, as Rakesh Kumar said, continuous spinal with the micro catheters that are being available now. We can deliberately puncture the dura, thread the catheter into the subarachnoid space and start giving low doses of local anesthetic, which will have a much faster onset of action. Why for some time this continuous spinal technique was not encouraged? What are the complications it produced? Especially in a pregnant woman.
Hypotension.
You give a high spinal, that is all iatrogenic. If you don't follow the guidelines of giving the drug, you can produce hypotension, you can produce high spinal, but if you know how much to give and how to titrate, then you won't produce all this problem. When you puncture the dura, what is the problem that majority of the patients can have?
PDPH, sir.
Appa, that is the answer. Post-dural puncture headache. Okay, whenever you puncture accidentally or intentionally, especially in a pregnant woman, PDPH is very, very
It's
common.
very common.
Okay, that is the most important complication that you have to remember. What is the mechanism of PDPH? How is it produced? See, once you say PDPH in the exam, you must be ready to answer what is the pathophysiology in PDPH, how it is happening, how can it be prevented, and how can it be treated. All these 3 questions you should be able to answer. First of all, what is the pathophysiology?
CSF pressure will get decreased, sir.
Where? CSF pressure is there in the cranial compartment as well as in the spinal compartment. PDPH is another short note question in your theory paper, very frequently asked.
Loss of CSF causing
Yes, sir.
sagging of brain, traction on meninges, and will
Very
cause
good.
pain, sir.
Excellent.
Intracranial
That is,
hypotension.
yes, very good. That is the mechanism. So what are all the methods to prevent it first? How can you prevent occurrence of PDPH?
Smaller gauge spinal needle.
Very, very small gauge spinal needle to make the hole very small. Very good. Okay.
Pencil point needles are much
Okay.
safer.
Much more safer. Excellent. Small gauge pencil point needle modification. Very good. Then
Good hydration, sir.
good hydration. Excellent. Very good. And then
Sir, patient should lie in supine position for 24 hours after the spinal anesthesia.
that is treatment. So prevention is only 2: adequate hydration preoperatively and usage of a very fine gauge pencil point needle. These are the 2 preventive measures that you can take. In spite of it, if it happens, what are the methods to treat it?
Bed rest.
Bed
in
rest.
supine
Excellent.
position.
Very good.
Again, good hydration.
Caffeine can be taken.
Again, good hydration. Caffeine, very simple analgesic like caffeine and paracetamol. 3. And ultimately,
And epidural blood patch can be
epidural.
Epidural
These are the
blood
4. These are the 4 steps in the treatment: bed rest, hydration, simple analgesics, and finally
Sumatriptan.
epidural. Sumatriptan also
we
is
can
only an
give
empirical
gabapentin
treatment.
and gabapentin.
So all these oral pain relieving drugs is one category of treatment. Don't go on extending it as a separate answer. What I am saying is, first point is bed rest. Second point is hydration. Third point is analgesics. It may be paracetamol, caffeine, sumatriptan, whatever you want to give. It is all analgesic. Okay. Fourth point is epidural blood patch.
Blood patch.
And fifth point, one more. A local anesthetic technique, very remote area from the spinal.
Saline infusion.
Saline infusion where? That is again blood patch or saline infusion is the same mechanism. Anything to put into the nose?
Sphenopalatine block, sir.
So that is the fifth one, sphenopalatine block. Okay. These are the 5 answers that you have to give as a part of treatment. So are you happy with the answer for a short note question on PDPH now? Divided into pathophysiology, divided into second part is the prevention, third part is treatment. Treatment part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First step is bed rest. Second step is hydration. Third, analgesic. Fourth, epidural blood patch. Fifth is sphenopalatine ganglion block. Okay, how it works nobody knows, but it has been found to be very effective, and that is the most recent trend in the treatment of PDPH. Okay, right. So these are all the things that you have to remember with regard to the neuraxial blockade. So the now you have to explain all these things to the patient and ask. Sometimes you may give her a choice of doing all this and then try to manage the pain. Now the patient has actually come with the pain and she has started gone into labor. Now at 6 centimeters dilatation, you have placed an epidural. Okay, what is walking epidural?
Sir, in
Sparing
walking
the
epidural,
motor
Hmm.
yeah,
of
very
fibers.
low concentration and low dose of the drug is given.
Hmm.
So the
Blockage
motor,
of
there is no
only
motor
sensory
blockade,
fibers.
and patient
Hmm.
can walk
Yeah.
along with
So
the
Ambulate.
previously, early when we started doing the labor analgesia with an epidural, people gave very high concentration, thinking that that one only will produce a good effective sensory block, but it also produced motor block, so patient was not able to walk or ambulate. So then they started reducing the concentration from 0.25 to 0.125, then 0.0625, all these things were done, and they found that patient had good motor blockade and was not able to ambulate herself. But in spite of giving such low concentration and when patient has got full motor power, what are the precautions you should take? Supposing patient wants to use the restroom during her labor contractions with an
Someone have
epidural,
to be with
uh,
her, sir, always.
company.
accompany her. What about the infusions that are going? Supposing you have put in an epidural infusion, how will you carry it? It's a practical point you have to know. Okay. Supposing you have put in an epidural catheter and connected it to an infusion syringe pump or the patient controlled analgesia or computer integrated analgesia, how do you disconnect that? You can put a stopcock, close that, strap it to the patient's back and ask her to go. Okay. And accompany her and go with her. Okay. That is what you have to do. So what is the other advantage other than ambulation? What is the other advantage of doing a walking epidural or a no motor block epidural?
Decreases deep venous thrombosis, sir.
Yes.
What about
So
advantage in labor?
patient can push because there is motor
That's
space.
yes, that is the second advantage. Patient can cooperate and do the contractions or increase the abdominal pressure and the so-called the push. The obstetrician will say push, push, push. So that push can be elicited. Why even today obstetricians are slightly averse to epidural? I mean the labor analgesia. What are the reasons?
Sir, they think that due to labor analgesia, there is a
More
delayed
chances
in
of
the
forceps delivery.
obstruction in the labor.
First thing they think the labor is prolonged because patient is
Long
not
labor, yes.
having pain. They will not cooperate. They will be very happily sleeping. So they feel that labor will get prolonged. Number one. Number two, they think there is no motor contractions and helping or aiding the delivery of the baby. And majority, as you rightly said, ends up with either instrumentation in the form of outlet forceps or a vacuum extraction. Okay. So these are the two things which make them not refer patients for labor analgesia very often. Now, unfortunately, after putting an epidural, there is no progress in the labor, and the physician wants to take up the patient for cesarean section. What is your option here? What are the things that you can do?
Sir, we can use upper epidural catheter to give um, drugs for cesarean, sir, for anesthesia.
Mm. So, what concentration you will use that time to produce anesthesia for operative delivery with an already existing epidural?
Sir, we have to give 0.5% of bupivacaine.
0.5%, sir.
So, do you have 0.75% bupivacaine available?
No, sir, we have ropivacaine 0.75%.
0.75%.
It is available abroad. Okay, in UK it is still
Seven.
available. 0.75% Marcaine is available, but in our country we have only 0.25 and 0.5. And so, if supposing you have put in a combined spinal epidural, can you still give a high concentration in that case? You have already made a dural hole and you have injected a local anesthetic, I mean the analgesic in the form of fentanyl or clonidine or dexam. And you have put in a catheter. You have been maintaining 0.0625% as analgesia. Suddenly, there is no progress in the labor and the surgeon wants to operate. Can you put in a higher dose here, or should you restrict or reduce the dose to 0.25%? Or can you again go for a spinal to give a regular heavy hyperbaric bupivacaine for analgesia, surgery?
It can be done, sir.
Which can be done? Giving a spinal or giving a higher concentration? That will be the homework for thinking and then answering in the next class. Okay. So that will conclude our discussion. Any questions or anything that you can ask? I know I can answer that. So that will be an overall picture of how to manage a patient asking for regional anesthesia, labor analgesia, starting from the antenatal period to the actual labor starting, first stage of labor, from inhalation to intravenous and parenteral analgesics to neuraxial blockades. And of course, the neuraxial blockade for the second stage, it can include the cervical, the pudendal, and the low caudal or even the sacral plexus blocks also can be performed if it is selectively for second stage, or if that is inadequate because of the lumbar epidural, if the second stage pain is perceived, you can supplement the blockage of S2, S3, S4 segments by these routes. So either by pudendal, paravertebral blocks are also now being recommended for all these things. So that is the additional thing that you have to remember. And in case if it is progressing on to some surgery, the advantages, you can supplement the drugs through the epidural catheter and complete the surgery also without resorting to GA. Okay, this is how we can discuss that. Right, any questions, any clarifications or any addition from your side? Anybody who wants to say anything extra? If there are no questions, Kamarchi?
Yes, sir. No questions in the chat box, sir.
Right, so next close then.
Yes, sir. Can I ask one small question, sir?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Is there any special modification of the procedures in labor analgesia for precious baby or advanced maternal age or any special category of pregnant ladies?
Yeah, you have to take care when you have an obese patient, you have patients with preoperative gestational diabetes, you have patients with existing hypertension, because nowadays you get patients who are elderly preemies, especially after infertility treatment. In all those patients, you have to be much more careful. That you have, as Rakesh rightly said, you have to ask for history of drug intake like antihypertensives, beta blockers, or antiplatelet agents. Obese ladies may be on hormonal treatment also. So all those history have to be elicited, and then you have to plan your epidural or your plan of anesthesia or analgesia should be tailored according to that situation. It is not a standard blanket rule that you can give epidural in everybody and get away with that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you very much,
right.
sir. Yeah, today's session was very informative, very useful. And I thank our professor for giving such a wonderful session on labor analgesia. And I thank the participants also for their active participation in this program. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Shall
you.
we end up this meeting, sir?
Thank you. Yeah, good night. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.